dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're continuing our conversation with Liberty Nation's enterprise reporter, Joe Schaeffer. Now, Joe, earlier in the show, we talked about Scott Wiener and how he has been putting out legislation that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has essentially been forced to sign because to deny the more progressive, the more fringe elements of his own party is pretty much it's a non-starter now, isn't it? They kind of got to either denounce the fringes or accept it wholeheartedly. I don't think there's a middle ground here, is there?
No, that's boy, I wanted to talk about this part because you can't deny this and placate that progressive base. And we see this on immigration especially. These wannabe centrist Democrats probably would like to pursue a more sane course on immigration. You absolutely can't do it in the Democratic Party, and I will tell you the number one reason why you can't do it. Think about the Republican Party. Even before Trump, there were certain litmus tests for their candidates. Second Amendment, if you were pro-gun control, you were not getting support by a vast swath of Republicans. And abortion, pro-life as well. I think most Americans, no matter how they feel about that, would feel like those are pretty normal litmus tests for a political party. The litmus test for Democrats and their progressive base-dominated party is you can never be on the wrong side of the racial minorities are being systemically oppressed argument. So that is how they fell into the Black Lives Matter trap in 2020. Because you cannot say, hey, defunding the police is crazy. You can't say that if you're a Democrat, because then you are on the wrong side of the argument that blacks are systemically oppressed. On immigration today, right now, you cannot say, hey, open borders is crazy. Let's deport these criminal gangs. If you do that, you are on the wrong side of the argument that brown people are systemically oppressed in America today. So that's the litmus test. And you cannot go against that litmus test. And no national party that aims for the center is going to thrive when that is what you have to support. And we saw it especially in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, if you remember how crazy that was, where the leftist moderators that Ramos guy from Univision, raise your hands if you want to give illegal aliens health care. And they all raised their hands, dutifully, because you have to do that in the Democratic Party. That hasn't changed. That hasn't gone away. And the progressive leftist base is not going to let that change. So what do you do? What do you do if you're an establishment Democrat who wants to trend to the center and you absolutely are not allowed to by your base?
Well, that's the $2.5 billion campaign chest question, isn't it, Joe? So it seems to me, though, that if somehow a blue dog Democrat, a centrist Democrat could come out and say, look, we've gone too far as a party. We need to come back. Forget all this stuff. It's not important. Let's focus on the economy. Let's focus on, for example, unions. That's very popular with blue dog Democrats. Center line, straight down the middle. Obviously, I'm thinking a bit Bill Clinton here, right? That's what I got. But a modern day Bill Clinton, I think that a modern day Bill Clinton could quite easily beat a more MAGA style Republican come 2028, unless and I do have Parisa, unless Trump's gambits now end up paying off massively, which they may well do. The big beautiful bill, if it energizes growth to such a level, but if it doesn't, a Bill Clinton of today, I think, would sail home in 2028. What do you think?
But you're skipping a step, I believe.
Sure.
Can a Bill Clinton of 1992 Bill Clinton win a Democratic presidential primary in 2028? And my argument is absolutely not. You cannot get the progressive base that dominates
Mm.
the grassroots of the Democrats to support anything remotely approaching a sane Democrat approach. And we're seeing that in illegal
Yeah.
immigration, especially.
Yeah. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. However, I'll flip that question around again. How could an America First candidate win in 2015 in the wake of Barack Obama? Win a primary in the wake of Barack Obama?
Barack Obama was always more myth than reality.
Of course,
It was
but
never
it's a
really
myth
something
that
scary.
many people bought into.
Yeah. So I don't see him as some kind of like great political example to lean
No.
to.
My meaning, Joe, is that a crowd of Republican primary candidates,
Mhm.
they've all sort of reacted to Barack Obama's tenure in the White House, and they're pitching their position. And then along comes Donald Trump. And in 2014, people say, an America First candidate, it's not something that's going to happen. The climate's not right, the people aren't right, the public isn't right. And yet he came along, and here we are, a
Well,
decade later.
I don't think a lot of the people in the know did not have that impression.
Sure.
He didn't come out of nowhere. He wasn't a surprise. Eric Cantor losing his when he was poised to become the House Speaker and losing his primary in 2014 should have been the the screaming whistle to the Republican establishment that you are in big trouble here. The base has had enough, and don't you even try to give us another Bush or Romney. And what did they do? They tried to rig it for Jeb Bush. I mean, they made it easy for Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the only person who came across as an authentic human being. And that is pretty much all you had to be in that 2015, 2016 Republican field. So I mean, looking back on it, we can say, yeah, it was surprising when it first happened, but it all makes perfect sense.
I mean, I bet on Donald Trump to win the primary. I was convinced that he was going to win, despite what everybody was saying, because I took the time to read the actual polls, and I went down below just the top line stuff to look at, well, they're clearly overrepresenting Democrats here. And obviously when that happens, you end up with a skewed thing, which is why Hillary Clinton had a 95% chance of winning the presidency. I was not sold on that idea from the start. But let's say that the Democrats do try and run a centrist candidate. Their best candidate for that at the moment appears to be Gavin Newsom, who is far from a centrist, right?
He is not, and he's going to have Weiner just hovering over him like an anchor, reminding the rest of America of all these crazy policies that Newsom was forced to literally sign his signature to while he was governor of California. And so it is an ongoing problem. And it's also, you know, being a progressive is, being this cultural radical, it's such a performative act. It's not a coincidence that they're always, they look like people on social media taking selfies, with these senators, doing these public protests against ICE and getting thrown out of press conferences, etc. That is what, what's the point in being a cultural radical if everybody doesn't know it? And so that means that national attention is always going to be thrown against them. And it's also, it's so stale now. The woke moment that was so big in the 20 teens, especially in early 2020s, it's like disco. It's just so bad. And they like to present themselves as the fun ones. And it now, I think, really your average typical American who really isn't conservative or right, isn't really aligned to anything. What is fun about being a progressive? What is fun about open borders that allow all these criminals into our country, raping women, committing all these crimes? What is fun about overdosing on fentanyl in a government-approved homeless tent in Portland, Oregon? What is fun about wearing a cap that says "Make abortion great again," like that actress Cynthia Nixon recently did, or that singer? I don't even know who she is. You know who Lily Allen is?
No idea. I'm a cultural relic.
She made headlines by saying, I've had so many abortions, I don't know how many I've had. And like, what's fun about that? This is the left. This is not fun. This is squalid. Squalid to me, I think, is the perfect word for it. It's dreary. It's dark. It's not where Americans are right now. And centrist Democrats are attached to this. And like we've been talking about here, how do they get away from it? I don't have an answer.
I think
how do we get away from it?
I think your point about the humor here is well taken, because Donald Trump he has a sense of humor, and he has fun on the world stage and on the domestic stage, and that comes through in I guess we call it authenticity more than anything else. Joe Schaeffer, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.